Welcome to the G5 Hive and our next installment of our Worker Bee series, where we deep dive into the G5 college football landscape with the folks that know the teams the best. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review. Today we'll be heading over to the Mountain West Conference and taking a look at the Wyoming Cowboys, who finished 3-9 in 2024. They wrapped up their 2025 spring practice with their spring game on April 26th. We have a special guest joining us today. He is the Wyoming beat writer for Wyoming Sports, which is the sports department for the Wyoming Tribune Eagle and Laramie Boomerang. He is a Heisman and Associated Press top 25 voter. He won the 2021 National Sports Media Association Wyoming Sports Writer of the Year. He is Alex Taylor. Alex can be found on X at Alex_M_Taylor22. Welcome to the show, Alex.
I appreciate a great intro.
Oh, we appreciate it. We appreciate it. Upping our game this year. For those turning into the G5 Hive for the first time, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been covering Wyoming football?
Yeah, I'm going into year 4 here covering Wyoming football and men's basketball here in Laramie. It's been an exciting journey. Obviously seen some ups and downs over the last couple of years. Covered Craig Bull's last 2 years, and now going into year 2 under Jay Sawvell. So I'm excited to see where this year brings us.
Well, moving over to Jay Sawvell's team, for those not familiar with the offensive style that the Cowboys run, how would you describe it?
Yeah, it's definitely shifted since a little bit since Craig Bull retired a couple years ago. But they brought in Jay Johnson from Michigan State. It's a lot of read option, run heavy. I know they want to pass the ball a little more, but it's maybe not the most aired out, exciting offense that you see in kind of across the country these days. But it's kind of pretty reliant on the ground game and kind of making the most of their opportunities in the passing game when they call it.
Well, let's get into the position where it all starts on offense, and that's quarterback. Coming into 2024 season, the question at quarterback was, is Evan Svoboda the guy? Well, as you mentioned on last year's show, it would be Evan Svoboda. Well, it was kind of a bumpy year, and Evan, as he was replaced by Caden Anderson later in the season, Caden started 3 games late in the season before an injury forced the Cowboys back to Evan for the final game of the season. Well, this offseason, Evan has switched positions to tight end, leaving Caden Anderson to battle it out with Gage Brook, Landon Sims, and Mason Derby. Is it safe to assume Caden Anderson is the QB1 for the quarterbacks here in 2025?
Yeah, he won't. Sawvell isn't naming a starter, obviously going into fall camp, but it would be pretty shocking if Caden Anderson wasn't the starting quarterback for Wyoming against Akron in week 1. Like you said, he only he had the 3 starts, but really, that New Mexico game, they did that Utah State game right before his first start. They did a 2-quarterback system, and he kind of outplayed Evan Svoboda a little bit. That's which kind of earned him the starting job the following week. And then he was named Mountain West Freshman of the Week after that New Mexico game. Obviously, we all saw that he threw like 340 yards, which was most by a Wyoming quarterback in a couple years. So that was pretty exciting. And then kind of took a step back in that border war loss to Colorado State. And then I'm trying to remember. I think it was like tied 7-7, or it was Boise State was up 10-7 when he got hurt. And I mean that game ended up being close. So you kind of wonder, if he didn't get hurt, would Boise State have been in the playoffs last year? I mean, I know Genty was kind of dealing with some injuries of his own during that game, but it's kind of a mixed bag of just in terms of the expectations of, I mean, he's young. Like I said, he was a freshman last year, redshirt freshman. He had back-to-back ACL injuries in high school at South Lake Carroll. So he's kind of still working his way back mentally from that a little bit, but he, after the spring game, he kind of made a funny comment about how he doesn't need to be running so much this year. He's kind of a pocket. He looks at himself as a pocket passer, which you kind of look at the history of Wyoming quarterbacks. I mean, obviously, kind of going back to Josh Allen. I mean, it's kind of been a dual threat mobile quarterback, and you kind of wonder. I'm curious to see the designed runs, because he kind of, when he took over for Evan Svoboda, that was kind of their whole offense, was making the defense kind of respect the quarterback run. So you kind of wonder how they adapt the playbook with a different quarterback in there.
Well, has anyone stood out for this number 2 role? I mentioned Brooks, Sims, and Drewby.
Yeah, I think so. Mason Drube, he's a Wyoming guy. It's obviously true freshman. He graduated early. He skipped his last semester of high school to come and participate in spring ball. But that's kind of it's been kind of an honest conversation with Salvell all spring, is just, if, say, Caden Anderson did get hurt, I mean, you have to make the decision of if you want to preserve that red shirt and then put in a guy like Landon Sims, who I think he's a third or fourth year sophomore, just from medical red shirts. He obviously came from the junior college level. So I think right now, if the season were to start today, I think Landon Sims would probably be the backup, and then Mason Drube would probably be third. And then, like I said, it kind of be super situational, just in terms of where you're at in the season and how much you value a redshirt year in today's day and age, where is it really worth redshirting a guy when they can kind of go wherever they want after each season? So you kind of have to factor those things into whatever decision you do make.
Moving on to the running game, heading into the 2024 season, we're excited about Harrison Whaley and an intriguing transfer from North Carolina and DJ Jones. Jones only saw 4 games of action, and Harrison Whaley underwent a scope on his left knee, which caused him to miss the majority of the season. Then in September, it was announced that he would only play 4 games to kind of preserve his red shirt. This allowed us to see a lot of Sam Scott. Scott finished the season with the most rushing yards of the team with 435 yards. Fast forward to 2025, DJ Jones just graduated. Whaley is off to Virginia, and Jamari Farrell is in the portal. Is it safe to say that Sam Scott is the Cowboys RB1 heading into 2025?
Yeah, I'm a little skeptical to say he'd start just right now, just based on he missed the spring. He was coming back from a knee bruise that he was kind of a lingering injury from last year. So I mean, you kind of wonder how much that would hurt him, just in terms of the competition of missing out on the spring. I really think Teron Kelman, if you ask me right now, I mean, if they're suiting up for a game this week, I would assume that he's maybe their starting running back. And it's kind of it's one of those things now that college is a little different than the NFL, but I think Salvell's kind of going away from the workhorse bell cow 30-25 carry a game running back. Because I mean, obviously you look at Ashton Genty, guys like that. I mean, that's kind of few and far between of guys who can last a whole season doing that. I mean, we kind of saw that with Harrison Whaley over the last 2 years, just injury wise. So I think right now, I mean, I think Kelman, Sam Scott would probably be the 1-2 in my head, just going into fall camp. But obviously they got they got two new guys coming in. I know. So the Max White from Iowa, I'm kind of curious how he works into the room, and then they got another guy, Demaja Harris from North Texas, who is coming off. I think he played in like 3 games last year, so it's a different looking room than what we saw last year. But I know Salvo has said constantly he wants at least 8 guys year to year in that running back room, just to avoid some of the things that happened last year, just in terms of the injury troubles and kind of not having a reliable back to carry their offense when a couple guys go down.
For the backs that you've gotten to see, could you kind of share with our listeners maybe their skill sets, and is one guy like a better pass catcher, is one guy a better short yardage or goal line back?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the curious part. I'm curious how the 2 new guys I mentioned, the North Texas and then Iowa transfers, kind of work themselves in, because the guys that were in the spring, like Nico Hamilton, Dante Birch, Teron Kelman, those 3 mainly were they're all very similar body size. I mean, they're kind of bulkier, bigger guys, and I'm curious I think the North Texas guy especially could be a speed back, maybe more outside. But I think the thing about Sam Scott that is kind of exciting to me is he's bigger too. I think he's probably 220 just weight wise, but I think he's kind of shown the ability. He had a couple really big plays out of the backfield in the passing game last year, and I think that's something they're going to need more of, just pass catching wise. And I know Nico Hamilton, he kind of, I want to say broke his elbow, or he had an arm injury, like one of the last plays of the game in the spring game, which really sucks for him. But I think he'll be back for fall camp in time. He kind of struggled with holding on to the ball. He had some fumble troubles and throughout spring camp, but I think I think it's a deep room, deeper than it has been really since I've been here. And I think that's something that they're kind of trying to put a more focus in, is getting back to kind of the Wyoming way. I think they were 7th or 8th in the conference in rushing offense last year, and that's just not good enough for what Wyoming wants to do offensively.
Well, let's move over to the wide receiving room. Wyoming had 7 wide receivers catch a pass last season. 3 have graduated, while 2 others hit the portal. That leaves 126 targets, 730 yards, and 4 touchdowns up for grabs in 2025. This year's room is highlighted by the outstanding true sophomore Chris Durr Jr. and Jalen Sargent. The duo combined for 54 receptions, 828 yards, and 3 touchdowns last season. What are the expectations for this group heading into the season?
A lot higher than they have been. I think that starts with, Salvo has been pretty brutally honest about that room and how disappointed he was in that performance. And I know we talked about how Evan Svoboda struggled last year, and a lot of that doesn't fall squarely on him. I mean, there was multiple games where wide receivers obviously just weren't getting open. And I think Salvo kind of made that clear. He didn't retain wide receiver coach Mike Grant, moved on. That was a Craig Bull guy. He had been here since Craig Bull came to Laramie almost 12, 13 years ago. So that's so they ended up promoting Jovan Bouknight, obviously Wyoming Athletics Hall of Fame, standout wide receiver at Wyoming. And I think that Salvo said all spring that was a leaderless room for Wyoming's offense last year. So I think you're seeing a little more pep in the step, just in terms of like Jalen Sargent's a guy who's going into his last year, and that's Salvo. Just when you ask about him, he'll say like that dude's a leader, and that's something that they didn't have last year. And I think you look at Sargent's role last year, he kind of broke out at the end of the year. But when you sit there and talk to him, he's like, he didn't feel like it was his place to lead last year. And now that's kind of changed. And I think you're starting to see that just in terms of the development of the younger guys behind guys like Sargent and Chris Durr.
And before we get too far into the questions, I'm just gonna if you've not watched Chris Durr, if you're listening to this, you haven't watched Chris Durr, there's one play that you got to watch. Alex, you know which one I'm talking about.
Oh yeah,
it's the incomplete pass that wasn't an incomplete pass.
throwing it out of bounds.
Yeah, throwing it out of bounds. He goes up, snatches it. I think it was number 3 on Sports Center or whatnot.
Yeah.
That was just an amazing play.
Should have been number 1.
Should have been number 1. All right. Did anyone stand out to you this spring?
Yeah, I think so. Dion DeBlanc is kind of he's in the exact same position Chris Durr was in last year, where he obviously he's a true freshman. I mean, I think he's listed at 186 pounds, 5'10". He's a true freshman coming in. He kind of has going back to what I said earlier about not wanting to redshirt guys. I mean, that's a dude that has a chance to see the field right away. He's kind of got pretty much the same build as Chris Durr, so I'm sure you'll see him in the slot. He's out of Houston. He enrolled early, so he can participate in the spring. He's roommates with Mason Drew, so that's an interesting ad. And I think Jackson Holman out of Arizona, he has the capability of playing his way on the field right away, just from a physicality, blocking, size standpoint, and then. Really, I think it's a really deep room just in terms of all those weapons they have in there. I know Jalen Bean is a JUCO transfer. He didn't really play much last year. Bryson Brantley, those two have kind of stuck out quite a bit during the spring. And then Clay Nanke is a converted tight end. He actually was a defensive end when he was at Colorado State. Came to Wyoming as a tight end, and then now it's really interesting because he's 6'6", 235, and they've been lining him up in the slot. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic, just in terms of you got a guy like Chris Durr or Dion DeBlanc who are 5'10", 6 feet tall, and then you add in a 6'6" guy who is playing in the same position basically. So I'm curious how they kind of utilize that just in terms of matchups, and that's probably going to affect the personnel that opposing defenses have to have out there in certain situations. So I'd say those three. And then Eric Richardson's another guy, Northwest Missouri State transfer. He's kind of a sleeper in that room just in terms of stats, I guess, but he's probably one of the fastest guys on the team, according to Sauvel. And then, yeah, I think just depth-wise, I think they're in a much better place this year than they were last year. Like I said, just in terms of leadership and the expectations of that room, and I think that kind of starts with the coaching and learning from a guy like Bo Knight as wide receiver coach.
Well, you mentioned a lot of names there, and we got Sargent and Chris Durr coming back. Do you think we see them out there catching passes from Anderson week 1 and add in wide receiver blank?
Yeah, I think those two are 100% the starters. I think in my projected depth chart, I had Jalen Bean in there, but that third wide receiver could be anybody. I mean, at this point, obviously they still have full fall camp to go through, and I know they still added a couple guys that weren't here in the spring. They added a 6'6" guy, Michael Fitzgerald out of Central Missouri. Yeah, 6'6", 210. So I mean, who knows where he ends up? Well, I mean, it kind of that's the thing. It's interesting just watching spring practice in Laramie versus fall camp. It's a little windier in the spring than it is in the fall. So that deep ball kind of alters a little bit. So I'm curious to see who's catching deep balls week 1 of fall camp there at I think last week of July, first week of August.
And you talked about like the leadership in this room and how Jalen Sargent didn't feel like it was his place. Who do you think steps up to be the lead wide receiver in this offense in 2025 in terms of just receptions and maybe yards?
Yeah, I do think Jalen Sargent. I wrote a story about him a couple weeks ago. I mean, Wyoming hasn't had a 1,000 receiving yard season and I think it was 8 or 9 years since Gentry with Josh Allen. So it's been a while since I think that's a realistic goal for Jalen Sargent, and I think just efficiency wise, I think there should be more opportunities for that to happen. I know in that New Mexico game, at least, like Caden Anderson's not afraid to let it fly, which obviously can be good and bad in certain situations. But I think Sargent, I would be my first guess, but I also think. I do think John Michael Gillenborg. I know we're talking wide receivers, but I think if I had to guess, he'll probably lead the team. He might lead the conference in targets. So in terms of what that turns into, I'm not sure, but I'm sure they'll be looking his way probably 10 times a game if I had to guess.
Well, moving over to the tight ends, and most college football fans know that Wyoming has a rich history in terms of tight ends and their utilization. But how would you describe how tight ends are utilized in this offense to someone that's not seen a Cowboys game?
Yeah, I think it's a really this is a position in a Wyoming offense that requires a lot of depth, and it's a position that you're going to have majority of the plays, you're going to have two tight ends in whatever capacity. You'll have two tight ends on the field, majority of whatever formation they're running out of. And a lot of that, I know we kind of talk about in the passing game, but like John Michael Gillenborg, Evan Svoboda, like these guys are kind of play a vital role in the running game, just in terms of it's kind of just obviously an extra tackle on the offensive line, just in terms of their athleticism and their ability to kind of be a lead blocker if they have to. And but obviously we're kind of looking in the passing game here, and I know they haven't really been shy about John Michael Gillenborg being an NFL draft hopeful for going into next year. I know I talked to him probably the last week of spring camp, and he kind of looks at Trey McBride and what he was able to do at Colorado State, and obviously it was it's kind of asking him. I mean, it was right when Trey McBride just got extended, and he's highest paid tight end in the NFL out of the Mountain West. So I was like, hey, like, is that kind of some motivation for you, or kind of like you kind of look up to a guy like that? And he's like, yeah, I'll be watching him this year because obviously very, very similar path, and he's focused on this year, but that wouldn't be that surprising of a jump for him to make if he's able to have a healthy and successful season this fall.
Well, speaking of John Michael Gillenborg, many were expecting him to have a big breakout year in 2024, but it seemed like, he had injury after injury. He suffered a high ankle sprain before the season got going. Later in the season, he had a collarbone issue. But despite that, he was able to play in 9 games, led the team in targets of 47, tied for first in receptions with 31, second in yards, tied for first in touchdowns. What are the expectations for him in 2025? And did he look healthy this spring?
Yeah, he's that was kind of an unfortunate timed injury. Just I think he high ankle sprain. Like I think it was like last week or second to last week of fall camp, which obviously lingered into the season. And I don't know how healthy he was when he did come back. I mean, obviously when he did, I think they started out 0-4, and they really needed him to come back, and so he was kind of limited in the offense. But you kind of look at the tail end of the year. I mean, their season, the last play of their offense had of last season was a game-winning touchdown from Evan Svoboda to John Michael Gillenborg with like 18 seconds left against Washington State. So that's kind of I'd say that's the expectation is the highlight tape that you see from him. I know is kind of limited last year just in terms of when he was healthy and able to produce, but I think that's kind of the baseline expectation is I'd say 70, 80 catches. I mean, obviously 1,000 yards would be realistic, and probably like six, 8 touchdowns. I mean, that's a guy like I'm not joking when Sauvel says like this is a guy that we need to get the ball to like that. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Like I don't care how we have to get him the ball and get him in space and this is a guy that he barely played football in high school, and he's kind of developed and blossomed into what coaches and players kind of around him are saying is the best tight end in the conference, and then also one of the best tight ends in the country. And you hear that and you're like, well, you kind of need to see it. But I think if he stays healthy, you'll see it this fall.
Was there anyone else that kind of stood out for you behind John Michael in this tight end room this spring?
Yeah, I think it's really. I know Evan Svoboda. He broke or fractured a bone in his pinky, so he missed like the last 2 weeks of spring ball. But he's made a pretty seamless transition, I guess, in my eyes. Just obviously, he has a great mentor to learn from, and John Michael Gillenborg. They're roommates. They're really close, so that's been kind of a fun storyline to watch. Is he took a lot of the blame for a lot of those losses last year. I mean, he got booed off the field against Utah State at home, like right in front of the student section. And then it would just be an incredible story to see him kind of come back, switch positions, and be a reliable number 2 tight end behind Gillenborg. And then really behind him, he hasn't done a whole lot. I think he's a sophomore, but Jake Wilson's turning a lot of heads. He turned a lot of heads in the spring. He's a big guy, and I think he's 6'5", 245. And so he's a younger guy that I think you'll see on the field this fall, but that's also like kind of the future of that room. And this is also a room. They have 2 new tight ends coming in this high school class, and this is a room Sauvel kind of points to and says if every position on this team was as deep and as athletic as the tight end room, like we'd be in really good shape.
Well, a majority of this offensive line returns here in 2025. The line's only loss is their center, who graduated, Nofafia Tulafono. This room looks to have plenty of depth as it returns 9 guys who saw snaps last season. What are your expectations for this room heading into 2025?
Yeah, that's another room. Like I said about the wide receivers, that's kind of a similar situation where you talk to the guys like Caden Barnett, Jack Walsh, you talk to these returners, and I mean, they know that they need to play better. That was kind of one of their weaknesses last year. And I was talking to Caden Barnett after one of these spring practices, and he was like, yeah, we didn't have enough pride in keeping our quarterback upright. Like we didn't take enough pride in saying, hey, like we're not going to let the other team touch our quarterback. And that was a huge issue last year. And I think Jack Walsh he's kind of proven I think he's going into year 4 as a regular starter. And he's a legacy guy. His dad played at Wyoming, and I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about him in 9 months as a potential NFL guy. I mean, he's played 4 different positions on the offensive line in college. He's moving to center this fall for his last year, and then Caden Barnett's sliding over with him to right guard. And then Wes King is another returning starter at left guard. So those 2 tackle spots are, I'd say, cornerback and those 2 tackle spots are kind of the biggest question marks on this team right now. I know Nate Geigers is a guy that's coming back, but you kind of don't know. You just didn't get to see him a lot. I think he tore his ACL like 9 or 11 plays into the first game last year. So, I mean, that's when your starter goes down on really the first or second series of your season. Like you can't really classify him as a returning starter, but like he won the job last fall. So you kind of have to wonder how he's coming off that injury. And if he's able to put another strong fall camp together to re-win the same job.
With all these guys coming back here in 2025, who does this room look to as the leader of the offensive line?
Yeah, I think Jack Walsh for sure. I know Caden Barnett's a vocal guy. I mean, those 2, I wouldn't say they're just leaders of the offensive line. I mean, they're leaders of this team, and it's been kind of I don't want to say refreshing, but it's been different because Sauvel said, I think first week of spring camp, he's like, yeah, we're not voting on captains anymore. We're not doing team captains. So like, I think he's kind of incentivizing these guys because he said he saw like you name 4 captains, and then if you're not named a captain, you're like, well, I didn't get voted as a leader, so I'm not going to lead. and he said he doesn't want to go through that ever again. So I think you're kind of seeing that with multiple guys like Jack Walsh, Caden Barnett kind of take that upon themselves. And I know Jack said he wants to take guys under his wing. I mean, obviously he's going into his senior year, so it's kind of up to him and up to Caden Barnett to get those, especially those tackles, up to speed and make sure they're ready come week 1 against Akron.
If you had to pick an offensive player to have a breakout type season in 2025, who would that be?
Can I say Gillenborg? I feel like it's probably. I don't know. Well, I feel like breakout. I mean, I think I'll say Gillenborg, but I won't go into. I'd say he's the obvious one, but I really think Chris Durr is another one that is pretty obvious. But I'm going to go Deon DeBlanc just in terms of when we say breakout. I mean, a guy that hasn't done it before, and so I'm going to go Deon DeBlanc, just a true freshman, just in terms of what Chris Durr was able to do as a true freshman last year. I think he has the potential to have a very similar year in terms of breaking out and just playing that slot position. And I know there's probably going to be a little more attention given to Chris Durr, Jalen Sargent, and John Michael Gillenborg. So that should open up plenty of opportunities just in terms of other guys that need to step up. And that was kind of the problem last year, is they didn't have that depth at those skill positions. So I think Deon DeBlanc, and then I'm going to throw out Jake Wilson. Oh, Evan Svoboda too. I think could have like a 40 catch year as a tight end, but Jake Wilson could be a breakout starting type tight end next year. But I think he could have a good season this year.
Well, for those not familiar with Wyoming's defensive scheme, how would you describe it?
Yeah, I think it's pretty unique. I think a 4-2-5. I know they do. They really only have 2 linebackers, just in terms of, and then a nickel back. But I think in terms of what bit them last year in that scheme was not having depth at those. So you had 2 linebackers, and then behind those 2 linebackers, they didn't really have guys that could spell the other linebackers. So all these starters are basically playing 100% of the snaps on defense, which wasn't a problem 2 years ago when they won, I think, 9 games. But then they ran into that issue. I mean, I saw kind of says like the clock started ticking basically on some of these injuries and the depth issues that were kind of a thing. I would say these are my own words, but like this was kind of before Sawvell took over. I mean, Craig Bull was very hesitant to start getting guys in the portal. I mean, you lose guys in the portal, and then he wasn't really replacing them through the portal. So there was a huge gap in a couple recruiting classes just at offensive line, at defensive back, because they lost guys to the portal and then didn't really replace them. So you last year, like, you basically had guys when Wyatt Eckler and Isaac White got hurt. I mean, you have some safeties that have really never played meaningful snaps, and they're out there playing against North Texas, who's a top 5 offense in the country. And obviously we all kind of saw what happened there. So I think that's just in terms of scheme. I know they rely on rotation, like constantly rotating guys in and out. And that was a luxury they did not have last year. And then when they did have to do it, it kind of came back to bite them a little bit.
Well, while the offense has a lot of the same faces in 2025, the defense is another story. Let's start with the guys up front along the defensive line. By the way of graduation or the portal, this group sees 6 of their top 10 linemen in terms of snaps depart from this room. The 2025 room is highlighted by the return of their sack leader from a season ago, edge Tice Westland, and nose tackle Ben Florentine. The staff also added 4 transfers via the portal. Given the losses in this room, what should we expect for this defensive line heading into 2025?
Yeah, I think, I mean, when you go through the list of like everyone they lost, I mean, obviously it seems like defensive line was kind of hit the hardest, but it's just looking at their their roster, I mean, they only have 2 returning starters on defense, and they are on defensive line. Yeah, I know. Obviously, you mentioned Westland and Ben Florentine, so I think obviously those are naturally going to be the leaders of this defensive line. And kind of what I talked about with offensive line, there was a lot of self-evaluation within this program going on. Obviously, after the 3-9 year, nobody wanted to go 3-9 and kind of end up where they were. So I think there's a lot of accountability that maybe wasn't there last year. And defensive line is one of those groups where they didn't get to the quarterback enough, and that was kind of one of their big issues. And then in terms of the run game, I mean, you look at the linebackers like Shea Sui and Noah he was their tackle leader, but you look at where those tackles were happening, and it's like, well, if they're averaging like that New Mexico game, if they're averaging 12 yards a carry and they're getting tackled 12 yards down the field, I mean, that doesn't look very good on the defensive line for obviously that first level defense. And you want to talk about breakout players. I got Dante Drake. I think that dude's going to be a star in this league for however long he's in the Mountain West. I mean, that guy, you talk to these coaches. I mean, he's a guy, he didn't do a whole lot last year just in terms of productivity, but just his size and build. And I want to say he's a sophomore. So just that youth too. I mean, he hasn't even come close to scratching the surface. So I think he's a big one for me on the defensive line. And then Braden Wilson's another one, Weber State transfer, all Big Sky selection. He'll be, I would guess right now, if the season started today, he would be the other starting defensive end. And he's raw. I was talking to him a couple weeks ago. He played like internationally in rugby. So he's also kind of got that mentality, that hot-headedness of, I just want to go hit people, and I want to make them fear me. And I think they lacked that a little bit just in terms of physicality last year.
Well, this linebacking group will look totally different here in 2025. The top 2 tacklers from a season ago, Connor Shea and Shea Sui Anoa, have graduated. The duo accounted for 138 tackles in 2024. Reserves Cole DeMarzo also graduated, and Reed's son is off to Eastern Washington. This means Evan Eller and his 25 snaps in 2024 are the most snaps returning for this room in 2024. How did this linebacking group look in the spring?
They looked a lot deeper. Kind of what I was saying earlier, they didn't really have the depth at that position that they needed last year. And they look, I mean, right now, I asked Salvo earlier in the spring, I mean, what's kind of the ideal number of a rotation for linebackers? And it's, I mean, 4 ideally, like obviously 2 at each position. But I really think right now, if the season started today, I mean, I think they'd have 5 guys that could play their way onto the field. And I know just based off of how Salvo kind of spoke about him, I mean, Gary Rutherford's a guy that he'll probably start, and he's probably looked at as the future of that position just here at Wyoming. I mean, he redshirted last year. He played in 4 games last year, and I mean, they made the decision together to redshirt him. But I think, I mean, Salvo even said a couple weeks ago, I mean, he probably, like, if that happened this year, like, he probably wouldn't do that again. Like, just going back to what I said about the redshirt thing, like, it's just probably not worth it to redshirt a guy anymore at a group of 5 school, because it's just an extra year that they're here not playing. So I think just from what has been said about him, and really just watching him this spring, I think he had him and Dash Ballman, which is another kind of, Salvo calls him Chad Muma 2.0, but he could be probably not this year, but he's kind of another future cornerstone piece of the equation at this position. But I think just in terms of guys they brought in, Braden Johnson and Ethan Stolsatz are experienced big guys that will definitely play a lot of snaps. And Evan Eller is another one that you mentioned that he actually redshirted. Like last year was supposed to be his last year, and those 25 snaps he played were in the first 4 games of the year. And then when he realized, hey, I'm only really playing special teams, like they made the decision to redshirt him. So he actually came back this year. So he's a 6-year senior. And I think that he had, I want to say probably 5 or 6 interceptions this spring, just from my own observations in practice. And I think that's not, that's kind of the depth piece that they didn't have last year. Just being able to put in a backup and give a guy a break and not really lose that much. I think that they should be much better at that position this fall.
We've really piqued my interest in saying that Dash is Chad Muma 2.0. This defense has had a rich history of Mike linebackers such as Logan Wilson and Chad Muma. Who's the next Mike linebacker that we need to have our eyes set on for this year? I know you mentioned Dash maybe for in a couple years, but who do we need to look out for this year?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I mean, right now, I think just in terms of experience, I think Stolzatz would probably be their starting Mike, and then Rutherford would probably be weak side. But that's just me. That's just me guessing. I think they're going to get Rutherford on the field regardless of what position he's playing. I mean, that's a guy that Sauvel has said like he needs to be on the field at all times, and he's been that good in practice throughout the spring to kind of earn those graces from his coach. And I think Braden Johnson, I don't know just in terms of Mike versus week who's practicing where, but I think Braden Johnson would probably be the kind of the backup Mike, but he will also probably play a lot. I don't know how much Dash Ballman will see the field, if at all, just because of Evan Eller also being there and with that 5th or 6th year experience. I mean, that's kind of I don't know if he will be able to kind of beat that out, but I think that's my guess, my best educated guess going into fall camp.
Well, just like every other room on this defensive side, the defensive backfield also looks different here in 2025. 4 of its top 5 guys in terms of snaps have either graduated or hit the portal. This backfield is highlighted by the return of cornerback Keani Parks, the safety Andrew Johnson. It looks like this room has a lot of experience at cornerback, but I'm kind of curious about the safety room and what you expect for them heading into 2025.
Yeah, so Keani Parks is actually a late departure. He left last week of spring and went to Houston. So Wyoming lost 2 starting defensive backs to Houston in a matter of like 4 days. So Keani Parks went to Houston, then Rook Brown, who was their starting nickelback, also went to Houston. So basically this entire room is starting over from scratch. And I think if you ask Jay Sauvel that right now, he would probably say that's not the worst thing in the world, just in terms of how that position kind of shook out last year. But it's a tall task to replace Isaac White and Wyatt Eckler. Those were both like basically 3-year starters that you look at 2 years ago, they played, I think, basically every single snap of their 9-win season. And then next year, last year, they were basically expected to do the same. They both suffered injuries of their own, and that depth issue kind of got exposed a little bit. But just looking at the guys they brought in, I mean, it's a really wide open position all the way across the board. I mean, cornerback, nickel, both safety spots. I mean, there's really no starter going into fall camp. I mean, these guys are going to be fighting it out from the first day of fall camp. I mean, nothing's really set. I mean, I have my own guesses just kind of coming out of spring camp, but I think Justin Taylor, the Wisconsin transfer, should be in the conversation. Same with Brooklyn Cheek, who's a Cal transfer. And then returners, Andrew Johnson and Jones Thomas. I think those 4 for me are, I would say, kind of the front runners going into fall camp. And then Jaden DaCosta, I think, could be be maybe the favorite at that nickel spot. And then corner is really a toss-up just in terms of who's going to start. I don't know. I know like Tyrese Boss, Marky Grant. It's a very young room. They just added a guy from Mercer a couple days ago. I mean, that was their last ad. Obviously, like almost a month after their spring game. So obviously Jay Salvo went out after a month after spring and went and added another cornerback. So that kind of speaks to just kind of how wide open that job is. And I'm curious to kind of go out there first 2 or 3 weeks of fall camp and seeing who's taking first team reps and who's kind of making the most of them. We'll see.
If this room just absolutely crushes it here in 2025, who do you think would be responsible for that success? If there's like one guy that you think can like really kind of step up and help the secondary?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I really think Brooklyn Cheek has probably the best intangibles just in terms of he's another guy that kind of like Rutherford and Gillenborg, where like Salvo said, like, I don't care where he's playing, like he has to be on the field. So that would obviously be a pretty good indication for him just in terms of winning a starting job wherever that is. I know he said, he was asked like, where do you feel more comfortable? And he kind of likes that deep safety spot. But I think just in terms of a guy that can come in and lead a group and lead that position, I think safety is going to be the biggest key. I think I don't want to say a lot of their losses, but like a lot of their defensive struggles last year came at that because of that safety spot. And you look at that game against San Diego State, they should have won that game, but they gave up like 2 or 3 like 80-yard huge explosion plays in the pass game. And that's just, you can't afford to do that, obviously, especially in a conference game at home. So I think if they had a successful year defensively, I think that would start with the safeties. And right now, if I had to guess, I would say Brooklyn Cheek would be a big part of that. But that's, again, without fall camp. So that's a guess.
Well, if you had to pick a defensive player to have a breakout type season here in 2025, who you got?
I got Gary Rutherford. You've heard plenty about him, so I'll just leave it at that. That's my I wouldn't say sleeper because I just talked about him for 20 minutes, but he's I'd say he's the one to watch. But I really do think Braden Wilson has the chance to be an NFL guy. Just if he's able to do what he did at Weber State for the 4 years that he was there. I mean, obviously and it's a really unique situation with him. I've never heard of this before in my 3 or 4 years covering Wyoming. He got in the portal, and he obviously got a bunch of offers kind of right away. And his old coach at Weber State was like, "Well, is there anybody that you haven't heard from that you'd be interested in?" And he was like, "Yeah, I want to go to Wyoming." And so that coach obviously like reached out to Wyoming staff and was like, "Hey, this guy wants to play for you." And obviously they offered him, and now he's here. But I think just in terms of, he's just a goofy guy, man. He's like I said, the rugby background. I mean, he just wants to go hit people. And I think that they lacked that tenacity last year, and kind of just that dog of, I want to go get this other quarterback and I want to make him hurt. And I think that right now that's kind of the guy that you would look to on that defensive line.
Well, we've talked offense, we've talked defense. Now let's touch on special teams. How do those special teams units look, and are there any concerns heading into fall camp?
Yeah, big shoes to fill special teams wise. Obviously, John Hoyland, he was just signed with Baltimore Ravens to go compete with Arizona's old kicker for obviously Justin Tucker's old job with the Ravens. So 5-year starter here at Wyoming. He left Wyoming as the school's all-time leading scorer. Obviously, he had that extra year because of COVID, but really big shoes to fill there just in terms of consistency. And I think he hit 2 career-long 56-yarders, which obviously at the college level, that's pretty impressive. But at kicker, well, right now Eric Sandvik, I would assume is the starting kicker. Never kicked in college before. He's a sophomore, but I guess in terms of concerns, I mean, I was talking to him, and I guess I didn't really realize he didn't kick in high school. So he kicked like his senior year. So he left high school. He had 2 field goal attempts in his entire high school career, and he made 1. So going into the starting job at the University of Wyoming, he's 1 for 2 on field goals in his entire life. And the way that he even got here in the first place, he came to a camp and he went 10 for 10 on field goals, and they just offered him a spot right there here in Laramie. So I guess in terms of concerns, I mean, that would be obviously one of just not having the experience of, because so much of kicking is obviously mental, and having not done it before, I mean, that'd be, you'd probably be, as a Wyoming fan, you'll probably be a little nervous the first time you roll him out there, but I don't know. We'll see. I mean, obviously he's proven in practice that he deserves it, and they haven't went out in the portal to go find a kicker. So I guess that would bode well for him right now. And then at punter, that was kind of a disappointment just in terms of production last year. I think Jack Colbreth was one of the busiest punters in the country last year, and the numbers weren't exactly strong. So Salvo kind of went out. He wanted to get a guy with experience, but also with years of eligibility left. So they went and got Bart Edmonston, who was All-American at the JUCO level. He wasn't here for the spring, so I wasn't able to watch him at all. But and then I guess a worth mentioning part of special teams is they lost TK King, who was their only first team All Mountain West selection, obviously as a kick returner. I wouldn't be surprised. I saw Chris Durr Jr. and Dion DeBlanc were a couple guys I saw returning kicks and returning punts during the spring, but that should be a wide open job too. I mean, obviously that was kind of one of their best offensive plays last year was a TK King kick return. So obviously they won't have that this year, but I'm sure they'll be just fine with whoever they add in there.
All right. What does success look like for the Cowboys in 2025, Alex?
Yeah, I think when people ask me like how do I think Wyoming season will go this year, I mean, I'm kind of just naturally, I'm like, it couldn't be any worse. Just in terms of injuries and everything that kind of went on last year. I mean, 3-9 is really not the standard for obviously the Wyoming team that we all know really since Craig Bull was hired. So I think a bowl game would be the obvious, like a 3-win improvement, and then making the postseason. I think that'd be kind of the obvious bar, and I think that would be another disappointment if they didn't reach a bowl game. But really, you kind of look around. I mean, this is the last year of the Mountain West as we know it, like the way it looks now. So I think it would be poetic. I don't know how realistic, but it would be something special, I guess, for a lot of these guys they missed Boise during the regular season. So maybe to play Boise again in a Mountain West championship, I don't know. I don't know how obtainable that is, but it would be pretty cool. I think they've beaten Boise once out of like 20 tries since they've been in the same conference, and it was in Laramie. So maybe to get one more shot at Boise, I think that'd be a pretty good goal for them, just in terms of obviously being in the Mountain West championship game and then go to a bowl game.
Well, you mentioned kind of dodging Boise in the regular season. Is there a part of this schedule that in order to find the success in going to a bowl game, like which part of the schedule do you have your eyes on of like, this is kind of that teetering point of like, hey, we're going to get to our 6 wins or we're going to compete for a Mountain West championship? Is there a portion of that schedule that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I think there's a couple points. I mean, really, I think for me, I mean, non-conference is kind of, if you're not going to make the playoffs, like if that's not your goal or if that's just not realistic, I mean, the non-conference isn't really that crucial for most teams. But really, like week one, I'm sure you saw the Akron thing. I mean, they're not postseason eligible, so that's a game that you have to go and win by double digits. Like, I know obviously we were talking about the MAC earlier, but like it's very hard to know what Akron's going to be. I mean, obviously any team at the group of 5 level, like you're just constantly changing over, but that's a game that you got to start off the season right and go win on the road against a Division I opponent. I don't care how good or bad that opponent is. I mean, they're on the same level as you. And then going right after that first home game against Northern Iowa. I mean, sure, looking at last year's schedule, you see that loss to Idaho. They lost at home to an FCS team. I mean, obviously a very good Idaho team that played Oregon super tight too, but that's just a game you can't lose especially at home to an FCS opponent. I mean, that's a bye game. So I think those in theory, you would really need to be 2-0 going into hosting Utah in Laramie and then going on the road and playing Colorado in Boulder. Because obviously you're going to be underdogs in both of those. But so those 2 games for me, and then obviously looking at the conference season, I mean, like I said, they dodge Boise, and then they have UNLV, San Jose State, and Colorado State all at home. So when you kind of look at that stretch, I mean, I was just talking to my buddy about this yesterday. I mean, I have no idea what the Mountain West Media Days is going to be next month, and I have no idea. Beyond Boise being 1, I don't know, and probably UNLV being 2. I mean, I don't know how the preseason rankings are really going to look after that. I think San Jose State obviously is kind of a team that people are looking at to be good. But I mean, just having obviously that this is the last border war between Colorado State and Wyoming. That's going to be a conference game too. So having that in Laramie, that's big. So I think that stretch right there is kind of, that's going to, I don't want to say make or break their season, but that's going to be a huge indication, I guess, of where this team is. And another interesting thing looking at this schedule is just Mountain West going back to 8 conference games. They only played 7 last year because of the scheduling agreement between Washington State and Oregon State. Obviously, that's no longer a thing, so they're going back to 8 conference games. So you have a little more leeway just in terms of the ability to make the Mountain West championship game at the end of the year.
You mentioned having UNLV at home, San Jose State at home, and Colorado State at home are huge. For those who probably don't know about all the things that are Laramie and all the weird things that happen, can you tell us and tell our fans what is it like, or what is it about Laramie that weird things happen there?
It's funny because every time like that question, like obviously the first thought I have is them beating Texas Tech 2 years ago. And I mean, obviously that was nationally televised, and it's so many factors too, right? Because you think about like the elevation, that's the obvious one of 7,220 feet in the air. I mean, that's, you want to say like that has an impact because obviously like just scientifically it does. And I don't want to say like teams overlook that, but when you're going to double overtime with Texas Tech in a place none of those guys have ever been before, they're like, where is Laramie, Wyoming? I mean, the emotional toll on that. And I'd say the fans, I mean, growing up as a MAC guy, I mean, obviously Western Michigan fan here. So like, I'm not afraid to knock them, but like some of these other group of 5 stadiums, I mean, you go there and there's 4,000 people there, and you can tell like who's invested into what program at this level. And then you come to a place like Laramie. I mean, even last year, I mean, they were 3-9. And even those last couple of home games, I mean, it's an event for people to go to. So, I mean, you're still getting 25,000 people in basically almost a sellout stadium for a losing team. And so I think that mentally that probably has an impact on opposing players in a sense of like, wow, people are driving like this. This is the only university in the state of Wyoming. So you got people. I was up in Gillette, which is a 4-hour drive from Laramie, and you see Cowboy Steamboat logos everywhere and Cowboys jackets and Walmart and stuff like that. So I think just in terms of the fan base, it's a very unique corner of the world. I'm very thankful that I've got to experience this because, like I said, growing up as a MAC guy, I go to Waldo Stadium sometimes and you can hear yourself talk. So you don't get that in Laramie, regardless of maybe like longevity wise. If they were 3-9 like 5 years in a row, I would probably not be saying this, but like 3-9 season isn't going to lead to, them having like a significant attendance drop off like other teams have.
Well, Alex, we've covered a lot of ground today, but is there anything else you want to share or think that we should know about this 2025 Wyoming Cowboy football team?
Yeah, I think just it feels different. I mean, I feel like a lot of people, like probably myself included, kind of fell into this trap of like Wyoming had been historically so good that you just kind of expected them to be good again, or like, and when I say good, I just mean really like making a bowl game and being in contention for a Mountain West title. So I think there was a lot of lessons learned last year. I know, Jay Salvo, that was his first year as a head coach. I mean, obviously he's been a coordinator for a very, very long time. He's been at the Power 5 level multiple times. And I want to say that just looking at some of the changes they did make, just coaching changes, like I said, some of the player turnover. I think a lot of things came at him so fast last year where it's like you don't really have a ton of time to react. And then when you do react, like to the fans, it's almost too late because you're 1-7 or whatever it is. So I think just culturally, I think they feel a lot different. They've kind of took last year on the chin, and I don't know. I think they're kind of putting that past them. And I think when you look at a guy like Caden Anderson, I mean, last year he was third on the depth chart, and this year, I mean, obviously he's going into the season as the presumed starter. So I think just in terms of that growth of leadership, you're seeing a lot of different guys step up that you didn't see step up last year because there was other guys here who weren't stepping up. So I think like I said, I think they're kind of just turning the page, and hopefully, I mean, obviously if it's up to them, they're going to get back in the postseason and get back to being that weird Wyoming team that is very, very hard to beat.
Well, Alex, thank you very much for taking some time out of your day to spend with us and share your knowledge. We greatly appreciate it.
For sure. I appreciate you guys having me on.
If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're listening in podcast form, please rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support. And until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.